Senator Lankford.
Thank you, and thanks for being here as well.
Thank you.
Grateful to be able to have the conversation. I want to talk a little bit about where we stand with ICANN, everyone's favorite conversation, and DNA. But my questions are, I'm sorry, DNS, not DNA. DNA would be fun to talk about as well, by the way, if you want to talk about that. But the budget request has a note in it that I thought was interesting. It says, in FY16, NTIA will continue to develop, implement, and advocate policies positioning the U.S. to meet growing complexities and political challenges related to internet governance and the domain name system. Tell me the status of where you're headed on this, and obviously Congress has spoken back on it, it's a little hesitant. So specifically, while you're talking about status on it, how are you balancing the foreign policy objectives with United States commerce, and I mean commerce as a whole of our business world, and how dependent we really are on this internet?
Well, let me start by saying our NTIA is, our role is stewardship of the internet. And so our goal has been to continue to move ICANN to a multi-stakeholder model. And in fact, we deal directly with ICANN, and the leadership of ICANN and their CEO is coming in tomorrow.
Can I interrupt for just a second? The question there is the why, and I think it's the foreign policy question. Why try to move that outside of our stewardship? Has it been a problem that we've been a steward with it? Why remove American stewardship from the internet?
Well, the challenge that we're not giving up our stewardship of the internet, but the challenge that we face with the ICANN IANA transition is this is and first of all, we're not going to give up our position of overseeing the IANA domain name situation unless we can assure ourselves there's a multi-stakeholder process and it's not going to be jeopardized, that there's going to be stability and resiliency and security in the domain name system, and that it meets the needs of global customers, and it remains that the internet will remain free and open. The challenge we face in our role is the perception of our role in the global environment. There is a lot of pressure, as you said, from foreign governments to, in essence, take over control of the internet and try and create places where governments are control of what's happening with the internet. We think that is the wrong direction to go, and therefore what we feel is that we're really a oversight. ICANN is actually performing the IANA functions, and so our goal is that ICANN continue to perform those functions, but the appearance of our engagement creates this notion of that the U.S. is a government in control. And that's against where we ultimately, where we want to be able to argue with the rest of the world. That's not what we want to see for the internet.
Right, I understand. And the skepticism is when we release the first generation, there may be some good oversight of that. And then what happens 5 years from now, and et cetera. So what happens with China and Russia? And we can have a longer conversation. I just want to be able to express some continuing skepticism.
Senator, I share your concern about that, and one of the criteria that I've said is we've asked for ICANN to explain to us how they're going to be accountable to a multi-stakeholder process, and there cannot be what I call a hostile takeover of ICANN.
Correct, and I would affirm that. One other thing I just want to mention, want to be able to chat about as well, are the IG reports, as I got a chance to go through some of those, some of the high-risk contracting. It sounds like you're working through that process on that. I just affirm that to continue to press on that. And then one of the questions that I want to be able to bring up to you deals with Cuba and the Cuba policy at this point. You and I have exchanged letters back and forth, and thank you for being prompt in your response on that. I really do appreciate that. As we've exchanged letters, the question that I had is, the Administrative Procedures Act is pretty clear that you can only use the statement about this being foreign affairs related if there's an emergency situation. I'm still trying to determine what the emergency situation was to make the change in Cuba policy without going through the Administrative Procedures Act, without opening this up.
Senator, I would have to, I would have to work with my staff and your staff to address that specific issue because I'm not familiar with it particularly, but I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, be glad to be able to follow up on it. What I don't want to do is open the door, which it appears to have just happened, that because the president, any president, and this is not about a personal thing on the president by any means, and there are agreement and disagreement on Cuba policy and where it's going. But when we make a change in policy that doesn't follow the Administrative Procedures Act and reach back on a 70-year-old law and say we're going to practice this a little different than what's been done in the past, it concerns me.
I understand your concern.
The change in Cuba policy seemed to be connected to this is foreign, and so it's allowable. With that exception, anything related to a foreign government would be allowable. And the Administrative Procedures Act was pretty clear it had to be an emergency situation.
Well, following the law is our #1 objective here at the Department of Commerce. And in terms of the specifics of the Cuba policy as it relates to the Administrative Act, we'd be happy to follow up with your staff.
We'll follow from there. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.